Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining in on today's podcast. We have Blake Stewart, who is a birth doula. And I know I've always wanted to know, what a birth doula is and just find out more information. And so I had came across her profile and I was like, I want to know more. And I just love everything that she shares. So I reached out and here we are. And I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Can you just share a little bit for those who might not, know you, just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Blake, and I live in Orlando, Florida, with my husband and our two boys. We have a 3-year-old and a 5-month-old, and I am a birth doula. I started about 2.5 years ago, so I'd still say I'm newish to the world. But I have been to quite a few births in the past 2.5 years, and I love it.
Yeah, that is amazing. I mean, obviously I have one daughter and I'm like, I know what my process was like. And so I'm sure all of the births that you've been on are all different, like
Yeah,
for
they
the most part.
No, they truly are. Every single birth is so different and so special. But yeah, I feel like I got into birth work because I've always loved birth. I was like that 13-year-old girl watching like Birth Story on TLC. I don't know.
I remember those. Oh my gosh. Now that you're bringing it up, I
Like,
forgot what it was called, but like,
so
yeah,
corny,
yeah,
but like, oh my God, I have to watch this.
I totally forgot until you literally mentioned that. And I remember, like, I would watch those too,
Yeah.
like when I was younger.
Yeah. Um, And so I've always loved birth. There was a part of it that always like kind of intimidated me. I'm like, I love watching this. I can never imagine like actually giving birth. Um,
Yeah.
and I always had the desire to be in the birth world somehow. Um, and never really thought of being a doula until like later in my life after I had my first kid. And so that's kind of how I dabbled into the world. It's been like a lifelong love. And then I had my own kid and I was like, I want to do this.
Yeah. So obviously that's incredible. You're a mom of two. And then you're just sitting in on these births. Did you have a birth doula with your first and with your second?
So I didn't technically have a birth doula. First of all, we can talk about what is a doula.
Yeah. Let's start there. So
Yeah.
for those who don't know or like see the word doula, birth doula, like, and are just like, we don't know what that is. Like, I really don't know the full details. So what is a birth doula?
Okay. It is, in very simple terms, someone that supports a woman through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And whatever it can look like a lot of different things for different doulas and different families. For me, I'm specifically a birth doula. And so I'd say most moms hire me around 20-ish weeks, and I follow them through pregnancy and birth and a little bit postpartum. Um, but truthfully, a doula can, I think, be anyone that is able to support you through birth. And I think birth used to be um, a village process. You gave birth, and all of the moms around you were there to support you, whether it's like cooking you meals, supporting you at the birth. It was like an aunt or like your grandma or your mom. Um, and so I think it is just like a safe person that is going to support you at birth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, you want that to be someone that knows a thing or two about birth.
Yeah.
Everyone goes through like different qualification processes, but technically, there is no formal qualification in order to be a doula.
Okay.
You could go support your best friend at a birth right now, and no one's gonna stop you, and you could be amazing. So my first birth experience, I had my best friend there who did know a lot about birth. She was like very familiar with the birth that I wanted, but I didn't hire necessarily like a professional doula.
Yeah. Um, so with birth, like, so did you go ahead and get qualifications?
Yeah. I went
Okay.
um, doula school, if you will.
Yeah, doula school.
And yeah, it's a little bit different. I didn't love my certification process. It was just like a little bit different than what I was expecting, which is okay.
Yeah.
I think you obviously learn way more when you're actually in births and seeing them play out. But yeah, I did go through my certification.
Yeah. Because I mean, I feel like hands-on is really like what you learn because those births are so unique. So you probably learn each time you're in on a birth.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so when you started out 2 years ago, I mean, were you nervous? How do people find birth doulas? Like where do people find you to like hire you directly, or where would you find a birth doula?
Um, Again, it's different for everyone. My best advice is like word of mouth. I feel like that's how people find me. I posted like a few times on social media. I'm accepting clients, and sometimes like friends of friends would be like, "Oh, my friend's pregnant. Like, I'll recommend you as a doula." And my first few births were friends. Um,
Okay.
I was like very comfortable with and like knew well. And then um yeah, I had my first birth of someone that was recommended to me through another doula, and I took her on. But it's always like a little nerve wracking at your first birth because you just don't know what to expect. But I think
Mm-hmm.
it's not about you, it's not about me. I have nothing to like perform or to prove. And I think um, getting getting out of the way helps so much in supporting the mom and like what they want and their specific desires.
Yeah. So when someone does contact you to hire you, and I'm just going to say you because I mean, obviously there's tons of doulas, but
Yeah.
with like your experience, what does that process look like? So do you meet with them in person? Do you meet with them online? And what do you talk through?
Okay, so usually I'll get like a text or an email or a DM, or just they'll contact me in some way and be like, "Hey, I'm this many weeks pregnant. I'm looking for a doula. I would love to chat." And then we usually do a call, a FaceTime, or an in person, depending on like where they're located or how much space both of us have. Usually
Mhm.
I'll say we like FaceTime, and it's just like a get to know you process. And I always tell people looking for doulas, I'm like, you need to find someone that you connect with very well. They're going to be the people at your birth, the most vulnerable moments. And not every doula is a doula for you, and that's okay.
Mhm.
So that's usually what we do. They ask any questions they have. I kind of explain my process, my services, that we do like a prenatal meeting and I'm at your birth. And then I just say, ask me any questions you have. I get to know them and their due date and where they're delivering and their hopes for their birth. And it kind of just like spirals into like a conversation. And then from there, they'll either hire me or they'll interview other doulas, and then we go from there.
Okay. And then like so when you're talking to them, are you kind of when someone hires you and maybe it just depends on what they choose when you're talking about what they would like support wise. Are they able to reach out to you throughout the remainder of their pregnancy with any questions that they like might not go to a doctor to? It might just be, just a general question.
Of course, yeah. I kind of think that's like my favorite part about being a doula is I get like really connected to these women over their whole pregnancy. And yeah, they're kind of texting me like usually on a like weekly or bi-weekly basis throughout their pregnancy. They get closer to their due date, and it's more like every other day or every day. And so yeah, we're in like pretty close communications the whole time. And for every mom that looks different. Some people want like to chat a lot, and some people don't really have as many questions come up. But yeah, I'm like always available for those kind of things. And I think a big thing that I like to go over with moms is like questions to ask your OB or your midwife, because like I'm
Mhm.
a medical professional, but if they have like concerns come up, I'm like, these are good questions to go over with your OB so nothing is a surprise. And so that's like a big thing that we go over before each of their appointments usually.
Mhm. And as far as like the day that they, you start laboring, or I mean, maybe have you ever had someone, well, I'll ask that first. If someone starts laboring, I mean, are you kind of, that they're about to go into labor. And so you're kind of just, around a certain time you're going to be needed. And
Yeah.
then you kind of just go in when they go in.
Yeah. So usually between 37 weeks to when they have their baby, 42 weeks, I'm available. I'm on call to them. Um,
Okay.
so usually around that time is when like I tell them I'm like I have your specific number on the siren number on my phone, like
Yeah.
anytime. And these are all things we go over and I do like a really long prenatal meeting with them before. Um, and so they'll usually call me in early labor and they'll stay home and rest. And depending on like where they're giving birth, I'll either like meet them at the hospital or meet them at their house. But yeah, I'm ready to go whenever they are.
That's exciting. Like a lot of anticipation,
Yeah.
but like, I mean, if you love it, then that's just like, I don't know,
Yeah.
you probably are just really looking forward to it.
Yeah. It's great. It's really anticipation. It's obviously like being a mom of young kids, the
Yeah,
anticipation comes with like, I'm like, I need people on call for me to be on call.
for sure.
I'm like, whenever I'm on call, I'm like, I need my mom and mother-in-law and husband. I'm like, okay, you guys are on call the next few days. So it's
Yeah.
like initial finagling when a mom goes into labor, but it's worked out every time.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, it takes a village even
Yeah.
on for your part.
Yeah.
So my question, like I linger with this question. When you hire a doula, like I'll throw my example out there. I went into labor at 37 weeks because I had preeclampsia. Obviously, I did not know I was going to get preeclampsia. And then I ended up having a C-section because I was not dilating. Could be for many reasons, that I was
Yeah.
early or just, I don't know. But we went into C-section. Gosh, I don't know, like 26 hours later, I was just like, I can't do this anymore.
That,
Like I had the epidural. Um, and I just wasn't feeling well because of the preeclampsia. And so for like somebody like myself, would a doula even sit in on um like my future birth or like my C-section? Like is that something that somebody like myself would hire a doula, or would you only hire a doula if you kind of have plans to obviously have, a more regular vaginal labor?
I personally have never had someone hire me with a planned C-section, but I would say
Yep,
moms never go into labor planning a C-section.
for sure.
And so I've had like quite a few births that either like ended in a C-section for similar scenarios as you, or their baby's breech, or something comes up along um the way. But yeah, I feel like this is my most seen scenario with C-sections is a stalled labor and the mom's kind of exhausted and it just happens. Doulas are not allowed in C-sections in the room.
Okay.
They only let one person, that's obviously the dad, that's going to go in.
Yeah.
So I guess if a dad didn't want to be part of the C-section, I could go because they just let one support person. So usually I'm there for their whole labor and then they have their C-section, and sometimes I'll stay till after the surgery, or sometimes I'll meet them at the hospital or when they go home a few days later. Um, so yeah, I feel like your case scenario, that has been like quite a few women's stories, and I feel like a big part is like how are you processing that and like integrating that into your life? Did it feel traumatic? Did it feel like it happened to you? Like how is that experience now a part of your story? And I feel like that's a big part of like my doula work and the post um birth conversations is like, what did that feel like for you? Did you feel like it was
Mm-hmm.
a good experience? Because I've had moms end in C-section. They were like, that was great. I was done. I was so happy to meet my baby. And some moms were like, I feel like this was happening to me and I didn't like
Mm-hmm.
that. And so big thing is processing through that. But yeah, it is
Yeah.
a very, it's hard. It's hard when your birth doesn't turn out necessarily how you want it to.
Yeah. And I was just curious because I'm like, I don't know. Like, see that I learned that doulas can't come in. You know, you can only have the one person in. I obviously haven't gone through pregnancy again, so I just didn't know.
Yeah.
So you've had cases where that has happened though. I mean, obviously you can have a plan, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, there's so many different scenarios that can happen.
Yeah. There's a lot of cases where they'll be like, we want to move to a C-section. And I'll kind of like nudge the nurses of like, can we try XYZ before we go there? Or like, can you get
Mm-hmm.
not an emergency, can you give us 4 hours to try positioning and like, can we try this and this? And so I feel like that's like a common thing that I'll offer before we get to C-section if that's not something a mom is like really interested in and there's not like an imminent emergency for the baby. I'm like, let's try hands and knees. Let's change it up a little bit.
Yeah. And I love that because I feel like, I mean, in my situation, or any mom, you know, if you're laboring and it's not, you know, you're not progressing, you're kind of exhausted, you're not really thinking for yourself. And then
Yeah.
your husband, if it's a first time birth, a husband rarely, I feel like, goes in being like, I'm going to advocate for my wife. They're looking at their wife like, I just want her to be healthy and I want the baby to be healthy.
Yeah.
So that's where you would come in.
To be fair, like I always say like you guys are a birth team, like mom and dad birth team, and I'm supporting the team. And it's hard
Mm-hmm.
to step into the role of like advocate and doula and know everything about birth. And their job is to just be the dad, and not feel this pressure to protect the whole birth space. But yeah, I feel like that's a big role for me, especially in hospital births, is this is what the doctors are saying. This it like means for you. These are the pros, these are the cons. What do you think about that? Because I do think there can be a tendency in um hospitals especially to be like, all right, we're starting pitocin, we'll come back, we'll check in 4 hours, and they're like, wait, what, like what's happening, what IV is going in me, what's happened? So I think like taking a step back and being like,
Mm-hmm.
pitocin, is that something you're interested in? And making sure there's like, I feel like it does prevent a lot of birth trauma and make the experience positive when it feels like they're choosing it and it feels like they're aware of the pros and the cons and what that means for them. So they can say, yeah, I'm good with that. And so that's like a lot of what it looks like for me in the hospital. If a doctor comes running in, like maybe in your scenario, like, hey, it's time to do a C-section.
Yeah.
Is it an emergency? Why are we doing a C-section? Who's doing it? Can I meet the doctor that's doing it? There's like a lot of questions that moms want to have to make them feel safe about the decision they're making.
Definitely. Yeah. In my scenario, I mean, I think my doctor was leaning. I don't think he would just listen to me, but I was like, at what point? Because I had cytotec, Pitocin, and Cervidil, right? I think that's another one. So, and my doctor was like, I said this in my first episode I ever launched with Mom Mode. He literally said, your cervix is like concrete. He was like, you're not even at a 1. And my mom never dilated. I don't know if there's like genetic factors, you know, that get passed down, but she never dilated. So then I was like, well, I don't know. It could be because I'm 37 weeks. Who knows? But at that point, I called it. But yeah, it would have been so helpful to have someone like you. In my experience, I wouldn't say I carry a ton of trauma, but you know, as moms, like new moms, there's so much going through our minds,
Yeah.
so much. And like you said, to have you there to break it down, oh my gosh, it would have been like a life changer.
Yeah.
Such a different experience. I love that. Like the doula, like what I'm learning.
Yeah.
And I hope it's really informative for other moms. I mean, I guess for new moms, what would be like the steps that you would tell them to take? I guess like finding a doula, like you said, word of mouth, maybe interviewing a few.
Yeah, I would say word of mouth, like local Facebook groups, like, hey, who's been your doula? Just so you can kind of have a list to go through to interview. I think talking to a few is really helpful just to see like what's their philosophy on birth? What do I click with them? I always say like when you're interviewing a doula, would you want to sit and have coffee with this person like outside of their doula role? If the answer is like no, they're probably not a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
I think your doula needs to be your best friend, but it is, you want them to be someone you're like really comfortable with and you connect with. Um, and I'm like, you can have, someone can have the credential list as a mile long, but if you don't jive with them, they're not going to be as beneficial to your birth as you think. So I'm like, that is a huge thing. But yeah, I say like word of mouth, Facebook groups, sometimes OBs, more so like midwives and home birth midwives are very familiar with the doulas in the area. But yeah, you can even ask your OB. Sometimes they have like doulas that they know and like working with. And I always think that's a green flag when OBs are familiar with doulas and don't just like roll their eyes that they're in the birth space. Um, but yeah, definitely like asking around is always the best bet.
Mm-hmm. And then for like mom's second time around, I mean, would you just advise any mom, like if they're just curious to reach out, and then they can tell like their initial birth experience with their first or second,
Yeah.
if they were interested?
Yeah. I think first time mom, second time mom, third time mom. So it could be your first time having a doula is your fifth kid. Um, Not everyone desires to have a doula, but anyone that desires one can get one at any point. I feel like a lot of second time moms hire me as doula because they didn't love their first experience, or they're like, I didn't have a doula my first experience, and this time like I want to do things a little bit differently. I want like a little bit more support, and so they're kind of trying to do things different. Or I've had a lot of moms that just like love having a doula, and it's their third kid, and they're like, I just love the extra support in the room. So yeah, I'd say anyone can get on board with a doula.
Yeah. And are you there like when they call you? Would someone call you like when they're on their way to the hospital, or do you sometimes meet them at their house if they're like having early contractions, or like is it just based on preference?
Preference. I always say I'll be with you whenever my presence is requested. So sometimes that's like very early on in labor, and sometimes it's not till a bit later. But usually it will look like a mom starting early labor, usually in the middle of the night. And my like best advice for early labor is rest and pretend like it's not happening. Because you're going to need that energy for active labor, and it just makes it feel so much longer. If like the second labor starts, you're like piping up and walking around and doing lunges and like trying to do the most. So I usually say like go back to sleep, take a hot shower, get something to eat, and just rest and lay low. And then when contractions start building up, they'll usually head to the hospital and I will meet them there. Moms that are like desiring an unmedicated birth usually stay home a bit longer, just to be cozy in their own house and work through some of like the early active labor at home, and then we head in.
Mm-hmm. Have you sat in on a few like unmedicated?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say it's about 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I literally like I always am like looking at stories and I'm like, wow, like I'm just like so amazed. Obviously, like mine was very different. I'm fine with how mine went. Because I just it is what it is. And I'm like, I was healthy, I got through it. My daughter was healthy, and that's all that matters. But I didn't really have an option. So like I look now and I'm like, wow, like that is so cool that women do that. Like
It's cool. And birth is like obviously beautiful no matter what it looks
so
like.
beautiful.
But I think especially when moms are like really desiring that experience and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, "Oh my God, I just did that. I did something like I was a little scared of. I didn't know if I could do it." Um, and they get to the other side. It's a really special experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that's like, I don't know, I would probably cry.
No,
Like if being a doula, like if I'm witnessing this and witnessing someone like experience exactly what they wanted, it's probably so beautiful.
cry every single birth, no matter how the baby's born, every single time. I'm like, the second they're crowning, I'm like, oh, here come the tears.
Yeah. Does it make you like want a ton of kids, or do
Yeah.
you kind of feel, yeah, like when you're like, and I want another?
Yes. Sometimes I'm like, oh. because I've had a medicated and an unmedicated birth, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I forgot that this is like really hard.
Yeah.
And you're watching someone, you're like, Dad, this is really hard work.
Yeah, I'm sure. So you had both an unmedicated and a medicated.
Yes.
Which one did you have first?
I had a medicated hospital birth with my firstborn. Um, I got the epidural, and then I had an unmedicated home birth with my second.
Oh, wow. That is that is amazing.
Thank you. It felt really amazing. Very different experiences, but yeah.
Um, which one, your personal preference, like which one did you love the most? Or did you were you scared at all during your at home unmedicated?
No, I prefer home birth and I would do it every single time. And I think for me personally, I felt less scared at home. I felt like, I think just what I see a lot in the hospital is overly lots of interventions that happen for a plethora of reasons, sometimes super necessary, sometimes, in my opinion, not the most necessary. And those interventions lead to more interventions, which lead to other stuff
Mm-hmm.
that a mom doesn't necessarily want. And then I think just from what I see, like sometimes they're fixing the problem that they created. um,
Yeah.
Not always. I've been to so many beautiful, amazing hospital births. The doctors, nurses are amazing, but I have seen that happen a lot. So I think I felt safer at home knowing like my body's able to do what it was made to do in the comfort of my own home. And then if there is like a hiccup, I can move to the hospital 5 minutes down the street. And I found like a lot of comfort in seeing the same midwives every single time throughout my whole pregnancy. They've been to my house. They know my family. They know my kids. They know my baby. And they knew if anything was even slightly off. They're like, oh, that's different from the past 50 times I've seen you. Let's check in on that. So they're so familiar with me and my baby and its movements and like everything, that there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of safety in being with people that are so familiar with your story. Whereas at the hospital, I loved my OB, but I was seeing like a lot of different OBs. It was kind of luck of the draw who was going to be at the hospital or what kind of
Mm-hmm.
on call that day. So a lot of it to me felt like up to chance.
Definitely.
I want to know like who's exactly going to be at my birth, where it's going to be, and not having to worry about that like made me feel really safe at home.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. I mean, my doctor, I actually know my doctor personally,
Oh, cool.
and there is four doctors in the practice.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, I would always tell him, like, you're going to be there, right? And he's like, yeah, I mean, I plan on being there, obviously, like, I go out of town here, but it's not near your, when you're supposed to deliver. And I got very lucky because when I had to go in, because my blood pressure had spiked, um, his one of his partners was there, but he was coming in the next morning. So I looked at him and he's like, I told you I would be here. And I really truly believe in my heart that he would have come in even if he wasn't on schedule.
It's always when that happens.
Yeah, but I'm like, I even have now like my husband talks about moving and I'm like, I don't know, like I want at least one more baby because I want our daughter to have a sibling. And I'm like, I don't know that I can leave my doctor. Like,
Yeah.
you really begin to trust. I'm
Yeah.
like, birth is a serious thing
Yeah.
and pregnancy, it's so you want that comfort. So I totally understand that. So when you hired, so with your first birth, you did not have like a doula or a midwife?
I had my first birth was my birth wasn't a hot mess, but my pregnancy care was a hot mess. I was in a specific practice with a midwife, and the office completely shut down when I was 20 weeks.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
like crazy. There was like a scandal in the office. I
Oh
know,
my God.
reality TV show. So the office completely shut down, and then I was out of care for a while. They were like trying to move all these patients to like different doctors around town. Um, and so I kind of like moved around doctors a lot and didn't get settled to my specific OB till like 31 weeks.
Wow.
When I got to her, I ended up loving her, and She was great. But yeah, I saw a bunch of different doctors, but ended with a great OB at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, that so and then so that's why kind of your second pregnancy you're probably like, I'm going to take this into my own hands and really choose what
Yes.
is right for me.
And between that point, after I had my baby, became a doula and I got to see like a lot of um, births. And I think I knew before I even left the hospital with my first, I was like, I'm going to do a home birth next time.
Yeah.
And not even anything was wrong or traumatic. I think I just like desired something like a little bit differently.
Yeah, and then after going through it once you're like, okay, you have an idea now. Your feet are wet with like what birth's like. You have your baby and now you're like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
So, what ultimately made you become a doula after your first son and not before? I know you said you had this like interest since you were young. What kind of finally made you be like, I'm going to do it?
I think if I'm being honest, I feel like I need some street cred. I feel like it's hard to be, there's probably amazing doulas that don't have kids, but I'm like, I feel like I need to know what this is like. Like, I
Yeah,
wanted a kid. I know it sounds so silly, but I like wanted a kid before I became a doula. So like after he was like 6 months, I was like, okay, I think I can take my doula course now.
that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, if I were one of my first things would be like, are you a mom? Have you been in labor? Have you given birth? Like, that's a really important thing. I feel like I mean, not to discredit any doulas out there that don't have kids, but
Yeah,
you know it and you've been through it.
yeah, yeah. And I do like know doulas that don't have kids and they're like amazing. But for me, I'm like, I feel like I have to like live it first and then
Definitely.
I can like enter it in with someone else, just like with a different set of eyes. So that's kind of why I waited.
Yeah. So then for your second, you had a midwife. Did you have a doula sit in on your home birth?
I had my same friend who was at my first birth, my second birth. So I had my two best friends there, and then I have two midwives, and they both come to the birth. So there's a lot of support walking around the house.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they kind of acted as the role of doula, which was great.
Yeah. And now talking about midwife, maybe you can break this down.
Yes.
What is the difference? Like, what is the difference between like an OB, a midwife, and a midwife? Because I mean, obviously, I know an OB is a doctor. What is the education of a midwife, and why would you have a midwife over like having an OB?
Okay, so an OB is a doctor. They go through years of medical school and um, they can perform C-sections. They do other, usually gynecological surgeries, um, and they are surgeons also. Um, Midwives, there's like two different types of midwives. There's certified nurse midwives, and then there's licensed midwives. There's also unlicensed midwives, but the two main are certified nurse midwives and licensed midwives. Certified nurse midwives have been through nursing school and practice as nurses, and then they go on to be midwives, and they can practice in and out of the hospital. There's like a lot of certified nurse midwives in the hospital system, and then licensed midwives go through midwifery school, and they can do a lot of the things that like your OB does in terms of like they do all of your prenatal care. They come like very prepared with like resuscitation stuff to suture you if you tear, like heart rate monitors. They're like checking in on you the whole time. But they do not perform surgery. There's like limited, they have a limited capacity if more intervention is needed. So my labor was like stalled for hours and hours and I needed to go on Pitocin. They cannot do that. I'd have to go on to the hospital. So there's just certain things that they like can't do. I'd say most midwives, especially just like licensed home birth midwives, see natural birth a lot. And so they're very familiar with physiological birth and like what that looks like and the process of that. And so they're like very patient with the process and familiar with what that looks like. Whereas OBs, they've obviously seen it, but it's not as familiar to them. So I think people kind of pick what they want based on like the birth they want. But that's kind of the main differences. OBs are doctors and surgeons.
Yeah. I always wondered because I often hear people be like, "Oh yeah, my midwife," and I'm like, or even at our practice that for my doctor, like there's a midwife there, and I'm
Yeah.
like,
There
when would you have a midwife
any
versus
you could have had a midwife, your
okay,
and then they could have delivered your baby, but then say you got to the point where it's like, okay, we're looking into a C-section, then your OB would do the C-section.
okay,
But I would say like a good amount of like my hospital birth moms have midwives. And they're kind of they practice interchangeably with the OBs. And if there's like more intervention needed, such as a C-section, the OB steps in.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep hearing, midwife, midwife, and I'm like, what is a midwife? Like, what is the education of a midwife? So that really helps. And you had mentioned that you had saw your midwife very often. So did they just check on you more because you wanted to do like an at-home birth with your second?
Um, I think I saw them on a similar schedule as I saw my OB, but I just saw the same people every single time.
Got it.
With in most practices, I don't know, here in Florida, usually your OB practice around here have between like 5 and 10 doctors. So you're seeing someone different every single time. Usually they want you to like know everyone in the practice.
Yep.
Yeah, I just meant like I saw them a lot because every single appointment I saw them, if that makes sense.
Oops, sorry, it cut out for a minute.
That's okay.
Um, okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so the rotation, they want you to meet all the doctors because just in case when you go into labor, then they know who you are, you know them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so being a doula, how many births can you take on at once? Like clients, and it just depend when they're going to deliver.
Yes. For me, I don't take on a ton. My like max feels like 2 to 3 a month. Just because I have small kids. I'm sure like when
Yes.
older and like don't need me as much, I can take on more. But I would say, I mean, some doulas who are like full time will take on like six, 7 a month.
Wow.
They're at like a birth a week. But I yeah, I usually take 2 a month, and I I've taken people with the same exact due date, and I'm just like, I know there's such a slight chance that they're going to go on the same day. It just never happens. Um, I feel like I'm more likely to have people go closer to the same day when it's like they're like 2 weeks apart, you know?
Yeah, that's very true.
Because usually someone goes a little early, someone goes super late. So it just, I don't know, it always works out. But yeah, my range right now is about 2.
Yeah. And so this is just, do you normally hit that too as well? Like, so you're normally attending like 2 births a month?
Um, so I did throughout like the last year, but I actually just started back up. My baby's 5 months old, and so I just started back up last week. I had my first birth.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Back at it, and then I have another one this week. So they're kind of slowly trickling back in. But I would say it's like different. Like some months I have none, and some months I have 3, and then 1, and then 2. So it's just like a little bit different every month.
Yeah. And how has it been um adjusting having now, I mean, I know that you just got back in it, but now having 2 babies of your own and kind of being back in this position of being a doula for other moms?
It's amazing. And there's like always that, like when you get that call in the middle of the night, usually it's like, okay, who's going to watch this kid? Who's going to watch this kid? Um, can someone like stay home from work? So there's like a lot of like finagling and um, that part. And then, but other than that, it like feels good to get back in it. I love like having um, that to look forward to. And but it's been great so far. Obviously like a little bit different as a mom of 2, and like they are my priority right now, and I also like to be like very involved and prioritize the moms I have, which is like why I don't take on a lot at a time.
Yeah, definitely. Um, as far as like, I don't know if you're able to like talk, but like about this, obviously, but what has been like your favorite birth? Like, do you have like a story that you don't need to go into too much detail, but you can kind of tell like when you think back to the ones that you've sat in on, is there one that in particular that you absolutely just like, it just pops in your mind?
I mean, there's like so many. I feel like I leave all of the births being like, that was just so cool. And I think like as a doula, like I never lose the like birth is just amazing to me every single time, no matter how many times I've seen it, no matter how it happens. But I think there was a birth like when I was like pretty new into it. I think she was like my like third or fourth birth, and she was like, I really want an unmedicated birth. Like, I don't know if I can do this. And um, I think there was like a moment where they were checking her and she was like 8 centimeters. And I was like, oh, I wonder if like she's gonna be like a little bummed that she's like not 10 and ready to push. And she was just crying, saying, like, I'm doing it. Like, I can't believe I'm doing it. Like that she was in the hardest part and she's like, I'm doing this. And I think that I just remember her birth, like her delivering the baby and just like that feeling of like I did it and I really didn't think I could do it. It was like one of my favorite bursts. It like sticks with me that she like really advocated for herself when they were like, let's do this or let's do that. She was like, I'm like really sticking to this. I want to see this through. And it was so special. Um yeah, that kind of stands out as one. And I mean there's also bursts of like moms that like don't get the birth that they want, and just their perspective and attitude around it like really is so beautiful and like changes how like I see birth. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like you didn't get what you wanted and like we made the best of it. But yeah, there I feel like everyone is just so special.
Yeah. That's crazy. Your mindset, like when you're at the hospital, I know I was much calmer than I thought I would be.
Huh.
Cause I was always really nervous about birth. Um, but you're just like, okay, yeah, let's just do what we need to do. Or like you said, maybe a mom feels, in her best interest that she'd rather just stay with what she's doing and, see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is, birth is super beautiful. I mean, you just never forget that. And
Yeah.
so it's really special that you get to sit in on so many different ones.
Huh.
Yeah. Is there anything, I guess, else that you feel is just super important to share for moms that might be really wondering if they should reach out to a doula? Like, what advice would you give to a mom that's like, do I do it? Do I not? And they're kind of on the fence.
I think what I say is like birth, it is very easy for people to say like healthy mom, healthy baby, that's like all that matters. But it's like if it's your wedding day and you're like a food and just like food and a dress, that's all that matters. And you're like, well, no, I was like actually hoping for like this color and this thing. And like, this is a day that you remember forever. And I think like, I tell people, I'm like, this day is one that you remember forever. It's like your wedding day, kind of. It's not just a day. It might be
Mm-hmm.
just a day for everyone else, whether it's like the doctors or nurses and it's routine and they see it a lot. But this is your day, the day that you're meeting your baby, and it will stick with you forever. I like have people I was on an airplane a few weeks ago and this like 70-year-old woman is like telling me her birth story and like being like, it felt like yesterday and like just every single detail. Like, and I'm like, it sticks
Mm-hmm.
with you forever. And I'm not saying you can have a beautiful experience and not have a doula. I don't think a doula makes or breaks your experience, but I do think like having someone come into your space, it's like hiring a wedding planner. You can like
Mm-hmm.
to help you guide through like what is it that you want. And I think the first question I ask my dual clients is like, how do you want to feel in birth? um and that kind of like guides us to like, how do you want to experience this? And I think like that's what I tell people. And like if you think having a doula is going to help that experience, it's worth it. It's worth it to like have someone there to feel supported. And that's usually what moms say is I want to feel supported, empowered, calm, like they name all these words. And I think doulas can come in and help that be achieved.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what I tell people. It's not just a day. And a healthy
Yeah.
mom, healthy baby are obviously the most important, but I don't think that's all that matters. You can have a healthy mom and a healthy baby, and people are traumatized by their experience. Um, so I think there's like a lot more to the story.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I remember every detail,
Yeah.
like every detail. Even the moment, I mean, a lot of moms probably remember like when you first hear your baby cry, no matter what is going on, it can be like the craziest scenario, but like you just remember little things that you'll never forget.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like expense, like pricing of doula, I mean, that's probably different as well. But if a mom's like, oh, I don't know if I want to spend the money to have a doula, um, what is that like?
Um, so every doula is different. I mean, if you Google how much does a doula cost, it says between like 800 and 3,000. It's like a pretty big range. Um, so I think you can like ask around to see if there's someone in your budget. Most doulas like offer some type of like payment plan. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then doulas in training, like my first, I think 5 births, like to be certified, um, I charged $500, which is like pretty standard, like in your first birth. So you can like look for a doula in training. Um, and then if you want support there and you cannot afford a doula, you can look for support someone else. Like is there someone in your life that you feel like would protect your birth space, that you feel like very connected to, maybe like knows a little bit about birth, and invite them into your birth space. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
a certified doula. It can be like your friend, your cousin, your sister, your mom. Um, that you could invite into the space too.
Yeah. That's actually really good advice. Yeah. Cause I know, that was one of my questions. I'm like, well, how much does a doula cost? And it might not be in the budget for everyone, or, some
Yeah.
people just, they might be like, oh, I don't think I need one if I have to pay extra. You just never know. And then I guess for you, like anybody listening to this podcast that is interested in getting a hold of you, like how in the Orlando area, how would they find you?
You can find me through my Instagram. It's Blake Alexis, Alexiss. And then I also have an Instagram for doula stuff, which is Wonder Birth Doula Co. So you can find me there.
Awesome.
You can my emails in the bio, so you can DM me, email me, whatever you want.
Yeah, I will include those links so that way anybody listening that's in the area can reach out to you if they have more questions or interested in meeting with you.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was so great talking about all things doula and just
Yeah,
learning.
talking to you.
Yeah. And I look forward to sharing this episode with all the moms that listen.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.